Hi everyone, welcome to Anu's classroom. In this video, we will be talking about how we can classify costs. By the end of this video, you will have an understanding on the various classifications of costs into fixed, variable, semi-variable, step cost, sunken cost, shutdown cost, traceable and untraceable cost, controllable and uncontrollable cost, and much more. So without wasting time, let us get started. Classifying costs into fixed cost as well as variable costs or semi-variable costs. Let us start with that. What are fixed costs? Fixed costs are those costs which remain constant irrespective of the quantum of output within and up to the capacity that has been built up, okay, or time. Examples of such costs are rent, insurance charges, management salary, etc. So as we were talking earlier also, we discussed about fixed cost while we were talking about preparing cost sheets. In that we said, suppose we are operating our factory on a rented premises. As long as our rent, as long as maybe let's say we have rented out one floor of the building. So maybe assume that the rent per month is 10,000 rupees. As long as you are only renting out that one floor, your rent per month will be 10,000 rupees. No matter you produced only 1% of your production capacity or 100% of your production capacity, it doesn't matter to the building's owner, you are liable to pay him 10,000 rupees at the end of every month. This will only change if you choose to vacate the building or rent an additional floor. Then in that case, the rent would change, but otherwise the rent would remain the same. Consider the case of an employee who's working in your unit. As long as that employee stays from say 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., you are liable to pay him, let's say, 5,000 rupees per month. During that 9 to 5 or 9 to 6 time frame, whether he has to produce one item or 10 item or 100 item, you are paying for the time he spends in the office premises. So you are liable to pay him 5,000 rupees. In case he takes a half day leave or in case he extends his office hours and does overtime, the payment to him doesn't change, right? So that is fixed expenses or fixed cost. Fixed costs can be further classified into committed fixed cost or discretionary fixed cost. Committed fixed costs are costs which arise from the possession of, let's say, a plant or an equipment or a basic organizational structure because you're committed to it. Discretionary fixed costs are those which are set at a fixed amount for specific time periods by the management in the budgeting process. Like for example, the R&D cost or the advertising and sales promotion cost, donations, etc. They may change from time to time. So that also includes your rent, like your discretionary fixed cost in case you have a rented apartment or a rented building where your office is operating. Your rent agreement would be from, say, for a period of 12 months or a period of 11 months, maybe even 23 months or 24 months, like that. At the end of that time period, that agreement will be revised and you will have to pay the new fixed rent, right? So that is an example of discretionary fixed cost. At the same time, supposing it is your own building, then you might have bought that building for maybe 1 lakh rupees or maybe 1 crore rupees. Until and unless you sell it, um, that 1 lakh rupees or 1 crore rupees is all that you had spent on that premises, right? So that becomes your committed fixed cost. Talking about variable costs, we said that these costs vary in direct proportion to output. They increase or decrease in the same proportion in which the output increases or decreases. Examples of such costs include the direct material, direct labor, power, etc. As we said earlier, if you are offing the machine at the end of the production cycle, in case you are only producing one unit, which may take maybe 10 minutes, the total time your machine stays on and therefore consumes electricity will be 10 minutes. At the same time, if you produce 100 units, then it will be 1000 minutes. So the power consumed will be different accordingly, and therefore the electricity bill that you're going to get will vary widely from one month to the other. So that is an example of variable cost. Then we have semi-variable costs, which are costs that vary but not in direct proportion to output. And they are that is the reason why they vary is because they are made up of both fixed and variable cost elements, such as maybe depreciations, repairs, light, heat, telephone, electricity, etc. So again, electricity is like that because at the end of every month, if you look at the electricity bill, you will see that even if you have switched off your power, for the entire month you will have to pay at least the fixed rental charges of the meter and things like that. And then additionally on top of that, whatever you have is what is your variable component. And that also based upon the units you consume, the tariff rates change, right? So for till say 100 units it is one tariff. If you go above that till 5000 units it is another tariff, and if it goes beyond that then the tariff changes accordingly. And that variable cost plus your fixed cost is what comes up as your final electricity bill. So electricity bills are the perfect examples for semi variable costs, whereas the power you consume for your machinery will be an example of your variable cost, because the unit consumed in that electricity bill is depending upon the number of times that machine operated, or the time amount of time the machine operated, whereas your electricity bill is composed of both fixed and this variable part, and that variable part is what is linked with the units of electricity consumed. The fixed part remains the same. So electricity bill is an example of a semi variable cost. What are step costs? Step costs are again fixed costs which in general remain fixed over a range of production activity, but then they jump to a new level as an activity changes. For example, if a foreman can supervise say 10 workers, if you have one more worker coming in, or maybe 5 more workers coming in, making it a total of 15 members, then with one foreman you cannot supervise all the 15 members. You will have to uh, hire one more foreman, making a total two foremans to what you can say supervise 15 members. And similarly it will go on. The same is the case with the rental cost or delivery vehicles and all these things which we had discussed earlier also. It changes only if you have to add on or reduce from whatever is existing, otherwise it remains the same. It follows a step pattern, and that is why it is called step cost. Direct costs are those costs which can be directly and conveniently or wholly traced to a product, service, or job, like the direct material, labor, or expenses. Indirect costs cannot be directly identified with the product or service or the job, and they include all overhead costs such as salaries of the timekeepers, storekeepers, foreman, printing and stationery cost, etc. Shutdown costs are the fixed costs that have to be incurred even when a factory is shut down on account of some temporary difficulties. During this period also, though no work is done, the fixed cost like the rent, insurance, depreciation, maintenance, etc. for the entire plant will still have to be incurred. Sunk costs are the historical or past costs, or the costs that are incurred as a result of a decision that has been made in the past. Such costs cannot be reversed or revised by any subsequent decision. Investments in plant and machinery, buildings, etc., are some prominent examples of such costs. Some costs are considered not that relevant for decisions which concern the increase in the present profit levels. Like, for example, you initially bought a space, okay? You bought the space for your office at, let's say, 1 crore rupees. Later on, maybe at the end, down the line, maybe 10 or 20 years later, that same building you might have got now for, let's say, 80 lakh rupees, or maybe it has increased to 1 crore 20 lakh rupees. Whatever that is, you have already spent 1 crore on it and you're owning that building. As long as you don't decide to sell it off and get a new building, that cost is in the past, and that is sunk cost. And when you are talking about the future profits, there is absolutely, you should not be relating with your future profits or your present profits with your past costs. Classifying costs as uncontrollable or controllable. Controllable costs are costs which can be influenced by action of a specific member of an organization. Like, for example, the foreman of a production department can control the utilization of power or raw materials in his department. Uncontrollable costs cannot be influenced by the action of a specified member or of an undertaking. Like, the foreman of a production department can control the wastage of power in his department, but if the power itself is being wasted in the powerhouse, then that result in higher cost per unit of power to him cannot be controlled by him. Coming to imputed or hypothetical cost, these costs are those kind of costs which do not involve a cash outlay. They are not included in the cost accounts, but they are important for making management decisions. Like example, the interest on capital. The interest on capital is ignored in cost accounting, but it is considered very much in financial accounting. If two projects require unequal outlays of cash, then the management must take into consideration the interest on capital to judge the relative profitability of the products. Like for example, if two products, both of them, if you have to produce, you will require a capital of say 50,000 rupees. And at the same time, if you invest that 50,000 rupees in something else, like maybe in mutual funds, or maybe you put it in a bank, or invest in some stock market, you might get a return of 10% rupees. Sorry, 10% on the 50,000, let's say. So now that all these three things require the exact same amount of 50,000 rupees, when you take a decision, you will consider the return on investment of that 50,000 rupees in all these three cases, and whichever will give you the highest yield, you will choose that. And that is what is imputed or hypothetical cost, and it is very much important when you talk about decision making. Differential, that is incremental or decremental cost, is the difference in the total cost between two alternatives. In such cases, the choice of alternative will either result in an increase in the total cost, which is called incremental cost, or a decrease in total cost, which is known as decremental cost. And while we assess the proper profitability of a proposed change, these incremental costs have to be matched with incremental revenue. That is, if choosing to, let's say, take a particular course of action will make you, in what you can say, put up an additional capital of 1,000 rupees. Suppose you're doing one project which costs you 10,000 rupees. Okay, now if you're changing from that process, say process A to process B, but that change will require you to invest 12,000 rupees, that is 2,000 rupees more than project A, then that project B, okay, should give me a return, a corresponding return increase also. If I have to increase my investment by 10% or say 2%, but if I am not even getting 1% additional return, then that that extra investment that I'm making is not that much worthwhile for me. So that is what we try to understand while we are talking about this differential costs. If there is an incremental investment cost, then we expect an incremental revenue. Even with decremental cost, we expect an incremental revenue, or at least the same revenue, so that the value of the firm is maximized. Out of pocket costs are those costs which are what you can say, they mean the present or future cash expenditure which regards to a certain decision which may vary depending upon the nature of the decision made. Like for example, if a company has let's say you have a distribution structure in place, and from your factory outlet it, and you are relying on a third party service, say for example right now, okay, or you are going in an auto rickshaw, you are a small business, from your production house, maybe in order to distribute your products, right now you are going in an auto rickshaw, okay, and to the distribution house where you're selling the products, and that is how you transfer your goods from your production house to your distribution house or selling house. Okay, so now let's say you are thinking about buying a car of your own. In order to do that, now you have to consider some things. Who will be driving the car? Should it be petrol car or diesel car? What should be the size of the car? What should be the capacity? Should I go for a car or a small truck? And what are the costs associated with all these things, including the petrol price? How often should I have to? How much would be my petrol expenses? And whether all the and with all these expenses, how much time will it take for me to get back my invested amount, get some benefit out of these invested amounts? All these things we have to consider before, as a business, deciding to buy a car instead of renting an auto or renting a third party courier service, right? So that is the out of pocket cost. And see, these costs which we consider at the for arriving at decisions are called out of pocket costs. I hope you understood the concept behind it. Then we have opportunity cost, which refers to the advantage in measurable terms which has to be foregone on account of not using the facilities in the manner originally planned. Like for example, what you can say, you have a building, okay, it could get you 20,000 rupees on rent, okay, if you are renting it out. But uh, if you are using that building for your own, as your own production house, then the revenue that is generated would depend upon your sales. Now if you choose to rent out the building, then the revenue that you might get, if you had used it for as your factory's production house. And suppose say you could have even you never know, you might be thinking that you might have even got 50,000 rupees a month if you had used it for yourself rather than renting it out. So that difference, that 30,000 rupees, that is your opportunity cost. Now let's say you decided to set up your shop in that in that space rather than renting it out. Suppose you only could make a sales of 10,000 rupees out of there, but in case you had rented it out, you would have got 20,000 rupees instead of the 10,000 which you are making right now. Again, there is a difference, right? 10,000 of 10,000 rupees. That is your opportunity cost. It is the what the cost which what you can say, yeah, it is the cost that we could have the cost that we had paid, or the cost which we think that we are incurring because we chose one alternative over the other. Okay, that is a purely hypothetical cost, especially in the example which we said. We never know, if we decide to rent out, it is fixed that you're getting 20,000 rupees. But if you are deciding to make your own business from there, then the revenue you get is, we can never know, right? You might be getting 10,000 rupees, maybe you will be making 1 lakh rupees, you never know about that. But again, as humans, we always think back of, oh, I should have rented it out. Or if you have rented it out, you might be thinking, oh, I should have opened my own business there itself, like that. So that looking at the back and what you can say, lamenting on what you might have got instead of what you're getting right now, that is simply put opportunity cost. Then traceable costs are those costs which can be easily identified or traced to specific products, services, or units, whereas untraceable costs, you might have guessed, they cannot be identified with a department, process, or a product. These costs are also termed as common costs and are incurred collectively for a number of products or cost centers. Then we have joint costs, which come up when two or more products are produced out of the same raw material or same process. The cost of material purchased and the processing costs will be called joint costs. So take for example, in an oil refinery, you will have a wide range of products such as bitumen, petrol, kerosene, diesel, all these things which are derived in the process of refining the crude oil. All these products will have joint cost comprising of the cost of the crude oil as well as the cost incurred in the course of refining. These joint costs are then apportioned to various products on some basis depending upon us. Or another example, say you are owning a bakery. With the same flour, the same maida, same egg, oil, sugar, everything, and using the same oven, you can bake, say, a cake or a cookie. Right, the raw materials which go in are same, and the process, that is the oven, might also be on for the same amount of time, say for example. Or you might be baking a chocolate chip cookie or a regular cookie or a cashew nut cookie, whatever it is, three different products using the same raw materials, almost same raw materials, but different and same what you can say, facility also. So the costs, which when we consider the costs, we have to consider them as a joint cost. And on some basis, let's say maybe I used more sugar over here and a little bit less sugar over there, or I took out this batch of cookies a little bit earlier than the cake, or something like that, we'll have to do in order to separate the costs and apportion it to different things, right? So that is joint costs. Then we have conversion cost, which is the cost of transforming the direct materials into finished products. And these are exclusive of the direct material cost, and it is known as conversion cost. It is usually taken as the aggregate of the cost of direct labor, expense, and factory overheads. So the factory cost minus the direct material cost is what is the conversion cost. It is the cost we had to incur for converting our raw material into the finished goods. So we are not including the cost of raw material there, that we already have. Now what is the additional cost that I'll have to put in to convert this raw material into the finished good? In the bakery example, I already have maida, sugar, egg, everything. Now how much amount of additional cost will I have to pay in order to make this, transform this maida, egg and flour into cake, right? So that is conversion cost. So those were the various costs which we commonly encounter. I hope you understood the various terms. If you did, do give us a thumbs up. It will help me a lot. Thanks for watching. If you have made it this far, thank you so much for your attention. If you like our videos, consider subscribing if you have not, and do check out the other videos in our classroom. You might find some other videos also over there which could help you through, especially IGNOU MBA. Thank you very much, and until I see you in the next video, bye bye.